There are literally hundreds of banks you can go to for an SBA loan, but choosing the wrong one can have a detrimental impact on your small business plan. So how can you be sure you're picking the right one? Hey, I'm Ray Drew, an actual SBA lender, and in this video, I'm going to show you how to pick the right SBA 7A lender for your project. And at the end of the video, I'm going to share 3 questions that no one ever asked me, but you should absolutely be asking your prospective lender. So far this year, there's been a total of 1,479 institutions that have gotten at least one SBA 7A authorization. These institutions include banks, credit unions, and 14 licensed non-bank lenders. That's a lot of options. Now here's the tricky part. Every single one of these lenders offers something different. The SBA 7A loan is not a cookie cutter product. The SBA simply provides a guarantee. So it's up to the bank to build their own program. So the bank's credit appetite, how they structure the loans, their terms, what their process looks like, all of that can vary a ton from one lender to the next. So how do you find the right one? Let's try doing what I normally do when I go to research a big purchase. Let's Bing it. I'm just kidding. Let's Google it. Sorry, Bing. SBA 7A lenders. All right, so right off the bat, you see you're getting hit with a couple ads here. And if you didn't know anything about the SBA industry, which most small business owners don't follow it as closely as someone like me, you're gonna just see the first 3 ads and maybe you'll click on one of them. I happen to know that none of those are SBA lenders, so it's gonna be a waste of time. As you go down the list, you're gonna see a lot of links from the SBA, one of which is the 100 most active SBA 7A lenders, which that's helpful, and we're gonna talk more about that in the video later. But the SBA is pretty much dominating the first page, and they're not a lender, and neither are any of these other folks. So the first page of Google is dominated by everyone except for SBA 7A lenders, which obviously is very confusing and makes it very difficult to find the right SBA lender for you. All right, let's try this. SBA 7A lenders in Florida. Okay, so once again, the first few are ads, and 3 of the 4 are not SBA lenders. One of them appears to be an SBA lender, a credit union. As you go down the list, there's a few lists of the top SBA lenders, which is somewhat helpful, and a few links from the SBA and some other brokers. It looks like there are a total of 2 or 3 SBA lenders that are on this list. So you're getting a little bit closer, but how do you know if these are actually the best SBA lenders for you? Let's try one more thing. SBA 7A lenders in Palm Beach County, Florida. Okay, so we have a broker, not a lender. Here's an ad from a lender. Not a lender, not a lender, not a lender. Here's a lender. No, yes. No, no, yes. No, 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 no. So the majority, once again, are not even SBA lenders. So as you can see, it's very confusing. Because this is a federal program, we the people have access to all the SBA's data. So here's an actual list of those 1,479 lenders. And right off the bat, we're gonna throw away the bottom 90%. Rule number 1, work with an expert. The top 10% of this list does 3/4 of the lending, and that's who you're gonna wanna use. So that leaves you with the top 150 most active SBA 7A lenders, which I'm gonna include in the description. Before we go any further, I just wanna clarify that this video works best for small businesses seeking financing between $350,000 and $5 million. The vast majority of this list wants loans $350K and up, and it's actually harder to find a lender to do some of the smaller ones, but here's some advice for the smaller requests. The list I provided has the number of loans and the total dollar amount that each of these lenders has approved so far this year. So you can do some quick math and get their average loan amount. And the smaller average loan signals to me that they're more inclined to do a smaller loan. All right, so where do we go from here? You can't possibly apply at 150 different lenders, nor would I ever advise you to do that. The answer depends on your project. But first, let's get rid of about 20% of this list by asking this question. Are you a preferred lender? Preferred lenders have the ability to approve these loans in-house on behalf of the SBA. Lenders that don't have preferred lender status have to send the loan to the SBA for a secondary approval, and that adds a lot of unnecessary time and uncertainty to the equation. And I would avoid this if at all possible. So now you're down to, let's say, 120 options. So let's ask the next question. Where do you lend? SBA lenders could be regional, national, local. All that matters is that they lend in your area. And I wouldn't get hung up on whether they're local. In fact, working with a local lender can sometimes be more of a hassle, particularly if they want you to move your banking relationship to them for doing the loan. I heard one story recently where someone was buying a business and they were using a local lender, and they thought it'd be a good idea to send a secret shopper to the business, and an employee snuffed it out, alerted the owner, and it sent the entire deal into a downward spiral. So you're probably not going to get that type of thing with a national lender who's not physically in the market. A good amount of the top lenders are national lenders. It's rare that a bank that only lends locally makes it to the top 150, but there are a few. Now, after carving out the lenders that don't lend in your geographic footprint, you'll still have about 90 options, give or take, depending on what state you're in. And that's still a lot of options. But this is where my insider info comes in handy. It all has to do with the project type. The main types of projects are commercial real estate, business acquisition, startup franchise, independent startup, construction, expansion, partner buyout, and debt refinance. I'm gonna go through a few of these, but before I do, there's a really important distinction that's gonna divide this list in half. Some SBA lenders are more cash flow driven, while others are more collateral driven. Now keep that in mind as we go through these projects. First up is a commercial real estate purchase. Pretty much any SBA lender will do a real estate purchase. It's one of the easiest types of deals to finance. What you need to decide here is what you're looking for. Is it rate? Is it structure? Speed? Underwriting flexibility? It's hard to go wrong if you're using one of the lenders from this list, but just make sure you ask the 3 questions, which are coming up, I promise. Now, if you're building from the ground up, that's a different story. Half the lenders on this list won't do ground up construction, and half of the ones that will do it reluctantly. My advice is to use a lender that is actually looking for ground up projects and does a fair amount. Business acquisitions, these are huge right now. If your purchase price is $2 million or less, you'll likely have a good amount of options. Now remember, these projects usually don't have a lot of collateral, and every bank has a limit on how much unsecured loan exposure they will take on any given loan. So you'll want a cash flow lender for this one. And once you start getting into the $3, $4, $5 million worth of unsecured exposure, the pool of lenders gets really small. I'm talking like 10 good options tops. Startup franchises are another niche, and there are probably 15 or 20 lenders on this list that focus on these. So you get the idea. So as you can see, there's a lender for everyone, but banks don't do a good enough job being transparent about their strengths and weaknesses. It's really up to the business development officers at the banks to differentiate themselves in the market. Kind of like what I'm doing here. Podcasts are another great place to do research on this. There's a podcast for everything. So if you're opening a franchise, for example, and your favorite franchise podcast has an SBA lender on, it's far more likely that they're gonna be the right lender versus doing a random Google search. So now on to the 3 questions that I promised I would share. And these are the 3 questions you have to ask your SBA lender before signing their term sheet. And I'm gonna assume that you've already determined that they're a preferred lender and that they lend in your geographic area. And thanks to my list, you can see how active they've been over the last 8 months. So number 1, hey, I see you've gotten 30 SBA authorizations so far this year. How many of these were business acquisitions? People get hung up on whether lenders have done deals in a particular industry. I think it matters way more that they've done deals for that particular project type. Number 2, what percentage of your term sheets actually get approved? Why is this important? If you're gonna sign the term sheet, you can't just assume that they're gonna come through with an approval. You want someone with a very high chance of approval. The higher the better. My number, for example, is 97%. So when I issue a term sheet, 97% of the time, they're getting a commitment letter. Now the industry average is closer to 70%. Which isn't great. Number 3, sticking with the business acquisition example, how long did each of your last 5 business acquisitions take to close from the time the client signed their proposal? Now, notice I didn't ask how long does it typically take to close, because if you ask that, you're gonna get the canned response, 60 days, whatever. And that is not gonna always be true, because the answer is actually a lot more complicated and it depends on multiple factors. So if you ask for the actual data on their recent transactions, you're going to get a much more realistic view of the actual timeline. So as you can see, there's a lot to do here. Having someone in your corner who's knowledgeable is key, and I want to help any way I can. So if you are getting ready to apply for an SBA loan, drop the project type, state, and loan amount in the comments, and I'll give you some recommendations on who to talk to. So there you have it. If you found that video helpful and you want more insider tips from an actual SBA lender, I would invite you to click that subscribe button because I've got plenty more where that came from.